Literary writing. Literary scholars write and publish literary analysis in the form of thesis-driven papers. Analytical papers represent the primary ways in which literary scholars communicate with one another across place and time. Teachers of literature assign literary papers so that students can practice writing for an audience of literary scholars. In addition, literary writing assumes a thoroughness of thinking that pushes our ideas forward into greater accuracy and complexity, places the burden of proof on the writer, and if written successfully, presents ideas clearly to outside evaluators, and provides practice in the evidence-based argumentation that is common to writing in many other fields. The most common content of literary writing is analysis of primary literary works such as poems, stories, novels, plays, etc. Analysis that addresses primarily the text itself without reference to author or reader biography is called close reading. In close reading, the analysis explores how the text makes meaning. The analysis might scrutinize literary elements of the text, such as character, setting, symbol, etc., and express the scholar's aesthetic response in connection with his or her views of the world. In this way, close reading is always also about the reader's experience and philosophy. The most common structure of literary writing is the thesis-driven paper. Using this conventional format allows scholars to ignore the structure and focus on the scholar's argument. Common elements of structure are thesis, organization, and development. Students who have been writing thesis-driven papers for most of their academic career will recognize these elements, but in the discipline of literature, these elements may operate slightly differently from their operation in other disciplines. The thesis is the most crucial element of a thesis-driven paper, but it is not often the idea developed earliest in the writing process. In fact, I often find myself writing my first draft all the way to the end and identifying my thesis and my conclusion, at which time I relocate my conclusion to the beginning of my paper. The thesis should be an argument of interpretation. Often, thesis statements result from asking, "What is the significance of?" The thesis is not a fact, a description, or a preview of topics to be addressed. It is a claim that needs to be proved about the meaning or effect of a literary work. In this sense, the thesis is the reader's opinion about his or her experience of reading, and the connection between that experience and his or her view of the world. The following examples are not thesis statements for literary papers. X novel depicts the life of Y character. This is a fact. In this paper, I will address the symbols in X poem. This is a preview. X is my favorite play. This is an evaluation. It needs connection to interpretation. Here is a sample thesis statement. In Molly Gloss's Jump Off Creek, Lydia claims not to be lonely, but her interactions with animals and people suggest she has been lonely for her entire life, making finding her place among the hard-working settlers of Eastern Oregon satisfying. This statement makes an observation about the novel, that the character claims not to be lonely. Whoops, there we go. And then builds an argument of interpretation from it. That additional evidence counters Lydia's claim, and that because Lydia has actually always been lonely, her integration into the community is satisfying to the reader. This claim about satisfaction is both the reader's individual opinion about the novel's structure and also a philosophical claim that speaks to human experience in the world. We are all lonely at times, and this common human experience makes Lydia's integration into the community potentially satisfying for other readers as well. Thus, literary interpretation is, as Robert Scholes argues, a moment where the reader claims textual power, or the authority to speak as a reader and for readers who may also have had a similar reaction to the text. The purpose of a thesis is to help the reader and writer focus on the idea being proved. For this reason, the thesis should appear close to the beginning of the paper. Often it appears at the end of the first paragraph because this location emphasizes it, but sometimes a thesis will appear in the paper's first sentence or in a second or third paragraph in longer papers. A good thesis statement will suggest a logical structure for proving the claim made in the thesis. In the case of the gloss thesis, the thesis has 3 parts. 1. Lydia claims not to be lonely. 2. she has actually been lonely for her entire life, and 3, she finds her place in Eastern Oregon. This is not the same as a preview. Each part of the thesis is a logical step in the argument. Each of these steps needs to be demonstrated using evidence from the text, so each will become a unique paragraph or section in the paper, and they will appear in the order presented in the thesis. Each paragraph should begin with a transition and topic sentence connecting the paragraph to the thesis and to the argument in the previous paragraph. A reader should be able to read just the transitions and topic sentences and get a sense of the overall argument. Because the transitions and topic sentences act as signposts for the reader, they should always begin rather than end paragraphs. Similarly, quotations should never begin paragraphs. Here is a sample topic sentence that could start a paragraph related to the thesis provided above. Initially, we see Lydia claiming not to be lonely. This sentence signals the reader that detail will be provided in the paragraph to demonstrate these claims. The transition initially indicates that the discussion is starting at the beginning of the argument, and also suggests that information contradicting Lydia's claims will come next. Following the transition and topic sentence, each paragraph should present evidence supporting the claim made in the topic sentence. In literary papers focusing on primary literary works, the evidence comes in the form of quotations from those works. Because readers read literary passages differently, the evidence must be followed by analysis of the wording. What is the passage saying literally? What details are important to the meaning you're deriving from it? Each paragraph should end by connecting the evidence and analysis to the thesis. Thus, each paragraph sandwiches the evidence, someone else's idea, between layers of your own discussion that help the reader understand that evidence and how it supports your argument. Paragraphs should never begin or end with quotations, and the discussion of the quotation should be longer than the quote itself. Here is a sample body paragraph. The sentence marked in yellow is the topic sentence. The green is the evidence, and the turquoise is the analysis. Notice that the paragraph does not begin or end with a quote, and that analysis is longer than evidence. Focus, organization, and development represent the heart of the literary paper, but a few other issues are worth mentioning. Effective introductions catch the reader's attention and prepare him or her for the argument. There's room for creativity here. Tell a personal story or a joke. Use a quotation or indicate expectations about a text so that the thesis can argue against them. Conclusions should wrap up the argument, but they can be creative too, in the way they relate to the introduction or point forward to implications of the discussion. Literary papers employ MLA document format, which requires 1-inch margins, double spacing, regular 12-point font, no right justification, a heading with name, professor, course, and date, a centered title above the first body paragraph, and page numbers located in the header or footer. Quotes of 4 lines or more should be presented as block quotes, beginning on a fresh line, indented 1/2 inch from the left margin, and without quotation marks. Because analysis should follow all quotations, there should be no indent in the paragraph that begins after the block quote. I prefer no extra space between paragraphs. Literary papers also employ MLA citation format. All ideas and words belonging to someone else must be cited using an in-text parenthetical reference, like Gloss 82. 3 or more words in a row from the source must be framed by quotation marks. The source must also be listed among the end citations in the Works Cited page. The MLA recommends that the works cited begin on a new page, but my preference is to have it follow the last paragraph. Please use a handbook or the Purdue OWL to format end citations. When first mentioning the novel and author, use the full title and author's full name. Subsequent reference to title and name can employ an abbreviated title, such as the title's first word or words and the author's last name. Also, make sure to stay in present tense, a sometimes awkward convention of literary writing. Proofread, and be prepared to use peer instructor feedback in revision.